So here we are, Cadwell Park. First time ever here as a driver, and only the second time I've ever appeared just full stop. I did one day here earlier in the year as media, so I have an idea of the track, but of course that is very different to what it's like when driving around it. You may have noticed, different car this weekend. We are driving the Ford KA from Tim, Turn 38 Motorsport. Before the day started, we just had to change over the rear hub and take out some of the ballast, which wasn't needed for this. That was in there from the Enduro car races that it's done already this year. So it's already got some racing pedigree. This isn't its first race, but of course it's the first race for me. So what I thought was sensible to do was take it on a track day, the day before our race, at Cadwell Park in the CMMCS. So the series we're doing some work with, and also a series that I've raced with a few times this year already. So interesting session here today, which we're going to go through at the start of this video. Can't lie, it's a very, very fun track to drive. I can see why it's a bit daunting for some, or for anyone really, full stop. It's a tough track to get out there and learn. It's very undulating, some tricky corners in there as well. And thankfully, as this was a track day, I could use my helmet camera. Can't use it in the race sessions, but I can show you some of the cool point of view perspectives from today, the test session. So here we are, clambering into this Ford KA. 6'1", maybe even more of me clambering into this car is a little bit interesting, but strangely it's actually easier to get into this car than it is to get into my Honda, which is very odd. And just to put this into perspective, Cadwell is a very long journey for us. It took us about, I think, 8 hours to get up there, and that was involving a few stops and interesting moments. Maybe that's a story for another day, we'll get onto that. But it was a funny trip up there, and we got up there on the Friday night, as this was a Saturday track day, which I know is a little bit unique with the race day being on the Sunday, a single day event. But a whole day of track daying to get out there and learn the track, which I was very much looking forward to. Just driving this track full stop. I absolutely loved coming here as media early on in the season. It's a fun track to just walk around and get cool camera perspectives, but I'm sure in a car it's another level to that as well. So here we are, we've got the GoPro facing forward. I think we also have a GoPro facing towards me, but of course that isn't so helpful. But even though we're on a track day rather than a race day, funnily enough, a lot of the cars out there were probably quicker than some of the cars that would be in my session tomorrow, which is, I guess, kind of amusing, but also shows how impressive modern road cars are around a racetrack. So first lap out, of course, just going out there, getting out of people's way. I'm doing a slow lap. I'm going to do one flying lap, let's put that in quotations, just one full lap and then back into the pit lane. So it was a 3-lap run to get the car underway. Then I came back into the pit lane and we just checked everything over, checked all the torques. So Tim from Turn 38 Motorsport, also the Kettering Motorist Centre, who's let me borrow this car for a few weeks, basically said there's a few things that you need to check after each session. So we thought, okay, just give it a few laps and then we'll check everything and then go out for a bit more of a prolonged session. So came in, did those checks, then went back out, and you're seeing some footage here of my early laps here at Cadwell. Of course, I don't want to do anything too crazy early on. You want to just get to know the track, of course, before you start learning the limits. But saying that, in a car of this pace, you're able to find the limits a little bit quicker, I'd say. And of course I wasn't really getting there that quickly, as is the way of my learning in motorsport. It all seems to be taking longer than it should, but I was really enjoying this, the early stages. So you can see here I was at a slow speed, I didn't have anyone behind me, so I'm sort of just trying to chuck the car into the corner, seeing how much it will grip, seeing what speeds I can take with the tyres on the limit. But after a few laps, after our initial run, then coming back out and doing another about 15 or so minute run, I came back into the pit lane and I gave you a nice debrief of how I was feeling after this first session at Cadwell Park in a race car. Quite cool. So that's the first part of our day done here at Cadwell. So I did sort of my sighting laps. As you've seen, we're a little bit late getting out, so I did one out lap, one full lap, and then an in lap. And that was just my first experience of the track, and I was like, wow, what an amazing place. Then we had a bit of a break, just make sure that the tyre pressures are all right, everything under the bonnet, you know, is all right in terms of fluids, etc. Make sure that there was enough fuel and so on, and generally just made sure that the car was where I wanted to be to go out for that second session. And really enjoyed it. Started to sort of understand a little bit more where the limits could be in this car. So the Toyo tyres that are on it originally aren't the ones I'm going to be racing with tomorrow, so I'm going to switch over to them a little bit later on. But I've got to say, what an awesome track. I've probably already just said it, but it's crazy. I think I was a little bit sceptical about coming here because it's such a long way, but I'm so glad that I did. And the KA being the way it is, obviously a bit slower than the Honda, maybe quite a bit slower than the Honda, it allows me to learn the track maybe at my own pace a little bit better. And also, you know, you can get close to the limits sort of quite early on. Now, I still realise I've got a lot of lap time to gain in this one, because it's all about carrying momentum, and you know, any sort of dodgy gear change or whatever, or shifting down too late or early, that all really hammers your momentum. So they're all things I'm trying to get to grips with here. But I've got to say, really glad I made the decision to come here. It was at the start of the year, I was like, nope, no way I'm going to Cadwell to even film, and I was going to ask someone else to do it. But you know, as the year went on, opportunities arose to drive this Ford, and you know, it all became a little bit clearer what we're doing with the CMMCS filming stuff that I've been doing this year. I was like, I'm going to definitely commit to filming, and then I decided a little bit later on, okay, I'm going to commit to racing here as well. So really looking forward to the rest of the day. Obviously we're quite early on, we're going to have a bit of a break now, go out again, still on the Toyo tyres, and then a little bit after lunch I think we're going to change over to the Nankang tyres that we're going to race on. They're a harder compound, they're going to be slower, so it's all about just learning the limits a little bit more with them. But hopefully the fact that they are a bit of a harder compound and more of a track day tyre rather than more like a race club tyre, they're not going to be as fast. But whatever, at the end of the day, we're here to have fun, and I've certainly had that so far. So good stuff, looking forward to getting out there and again in a little bit. Still, I don't know, it still looks like it's going to rain at any second, but I think you know, for the forecast, I think we're all right. Let's see how the day goes. So after a little bit of a break, I decided to head back out there before the lunch break for 2 15-minute runs. I think I did this time. So you can see by this point we've set up a little bit of our area in the paddock. Got the sort of cover. I don't know what it's actually called, probably should ask my dad just so I can set in these videos, but it's a nice little cover there, nice little shelter that if it starts raining or whatever, that the car can sit under. Now of course it's not stopping it from all elements, but it'll help protect it a little bit there, and means that we can work on it in most weathers, maybe except extreme wind and sleet and so on. Regardless, it helps out a little bit, and you can see all our tents there ready for another nice night of camping. But the K heading out to the track once again. Massive thank you to John for helping a lot this weekend. He did filming on this track day. There was a couple of us out there doing track daying for the event of the day after. Not that many, I think. Apparently only like 8 or 9 of like the 40 or 50 cars that were entered were actually race cars for the day after, which I found a little bit surprising. But regardless, it was nice to be out there with some race cars as well as some of the other really fast road cars. But as I was saying, thanks to John, because he did a lot of filming this weekend. His first time ever at Cadwell Park, so I think it was an interesting experience for him. It is a very unique circuit here in the UK. I mean, we've got tracks like Brands Hatch, Donington, just 2 I can think of the top of my head that are quite up and down, quite a lot of hills, but I'd say this one takes the crown. It was the most spectacular track in terms of terrain. Now of course you're seeing here some pretty bad lines early on. I think maybe my excuse here can be I was getting out the way of someone, but there were a few corners around this circuit that I was struggling at a little bit to understand what is the quickest line through here, because in my head this is a very slow car. Obviously, even in just road car terms, it's quite a slow car. It's very basic. That's the idea of the enduro car regulations, which this car is built to, is keep it quite standard, only fit the parts you really need to and would want to go racing, and that helps keep the budget down and keeps across the board a nice level playing field. I mean, of course it's never going to be 100%. You're going to have teams that know their way around race cars, which obviously can find you probably a second or two, but regardless, they're good fun cars to get started in, and this was my first experience, as I said, and I could definitely recommend it. What a great entry to motorsport I can see this being, especially in the Enduro car series, where you're going to be surely having constant battles. But as it was a slow car, it made me think, am I going to have to change the typical racing line? Because of course it's all about keeping the momentum up, and sometimes is it going to be worth taking the wider line into a corner, because of course you're going to be travelling all those extra meters, but in a car like this that maybe makes more difference, I don't know. Or do you want to take that wide line to make sure you get the good momentum down the straight? Now these are all questions that were ringing around in my head throughout the whole day. I also had some lap times that I was going for. I was trying to aim for a 2:02, which I know is nothing special, but there are lots of factors in play here, and I'd like to say that I'm not exactly the most experienced racing driver, so that can maybe be one excuse here. But also I realised that the slipstream is so important in a car like this, and I wasn't going to be having any of that this weekend because I was the only car in my class. So it is what it is, but I'm sure there's going to be some time lost there at least. But I know there's a lot of time in myself to find as well, and maybe some adjustments to the car in terms of tyre pressures and things you can change that we could do. But anyway, our first proper set of runs came to an end here. I was wondering what was going on here with the BMWs in front, but we all got it sorted out in the end. And there we are, there's our first proper runs done. So there we are, another session in the books there. I think that was a bit longer this time. I was thinking, oh, should I come in this lap? Now I'll go around for another, and that happened a couple of times, so I did a few more laps than I expected there, but that's all good. I think I was about 25 minutes in the car there, so that's way over a race distance, nearly 2 race distances for us there, so that's good to see. The car is, doing well. We're going to probably put a bit more oil in it. We'll obviously refill it for the afternoon, but overall really good. I think that the tyres, the Avon tyres, sorry, the Toyo tyres, isn't it? They're actually quite nice, but the ones we're going to go on to, Nankang tyres, might not quite be as quick, but we'll find that out later. But we were going to go out for another session before lunch, but they've actually called lunch early, so we're going to have a long lunch break and then go out a little bit after when the afternoon session starts. But yeah, it's been a good day here. I think the rain that was kind of threatening before the weekend has held off so far, so yeah, I mean, we don't really have much choice. We've only got really one set we've got 2 sets of tyres, but one set that can only run in the rain really. The Nankang NS2Rs, and they're not like a full wet like you would have seen on the Civic, which we had the Michelins. So it's basically an all-weather tyre, which they have as a spec series for a few championships, or at least they used to, and I think it's sort of a solid, reliable tyre. Let's touch wood, that's the case. Anyway, so we're going to have this long break and then we'll go out after lunch. But before we go out, let's quickly get that 5-star windscreen cleaning service. There we are, lovely stuff. But time for the afternoon session. We're still staying on those Toyo tyres that Tim gave me. They were only a backup really, but they were on the car in the first place, and Tim had got the car properly set up for them, so we stuck with those for the first sort of 2/3 of the day, and later on we're going to put on the Nankang tyres, the NS2R tyres, which I think are known as a good track day tyre, but possibly they're going to be squandering some time in a race situation. I don't think they're probably quite as good as the Toyo tyres, but then they're not really designed to be as much of a race car tyre as the Toyos, and that's just my understanding at least. They definitely didn't feel quite the same, but we'll get onto that later on. I think it's time I take you around a full lap of Cadwell here. I mean, it's not a particularly good lap, don't get me wrong, but I can show you around it. So turn 1 here is a little bit scary. I'm sure it's a little bit more scary in a car that's quicker. My aim was to get around here flat, so just keep an eye on that throughout the weekend. I'm sure the Enduro car guys are doing it flat on lap 1 of Corley, but of course my first time in this car and around this circuit, I needed to build up some confidence. But going through there, those corners, the double right-handers, are 2 corners that I really was struggling to understand the best line in this car because of its slow speed. Where am I supposed to be going with this? Should I be going out wide? I tried different lines throughout the weekend, and the fact I was the only person in my class meant really just focus on yourself, Alex, and try and just get it better. You can see a bit of a shake there of the head. I think I maybe shifted down a little bit, or shifted up possibly a little bit too early. And then down to here, this is, I'd say, probably one of the trickiest corners for me here. So I was trying to get more and more committed through here, but I never felt 100% comfortable through here. This is the gooseneck, I think it's called. I'm not too familiar with these corner names. As I said, only the second time here, full stop, so please don't go at me too much. But regardless, down there, I enjoyed braking downhill. Of course, you're having to back up the braking a little bit more than you'd expect because you're going downhill and it is so steep. But then the opposite effect is done through this section of the track. Up to the mountain, of course, you're not braking up the mountain, but the corners preceding it, you are uphill a little bit, meaning that you can probably brake later than your brain thinks is naturally possible. So then through here, I absolutely love this section. This is one of my favourite sections of track I think I've driven on so far. Possibly it's a combination of it being in this car where you're much more on the limit, because it's obviously nearly all flat out in comparison to if it was in my Honda. I'm sure it would have been a slightly different story, but regardless, then through the last couple of corners, this final corner, for whatever reason, I just couldn't get it right. I just didn't feel good coming out of that corner at all throughout the weekend. I never felt that I got it right. But there we are, that's a full lap, and obviously slowing down towards the end here. You can see I'm sort of looking around, and actually I think a little bit of plastic of one of my GoPros came loose, so I decided to just sort of pull off towards the end there. But regardless, a good couple of runs there, really got my eye in on the track and started to find out where the limits are starting to be with this car around this track. So there we are, 2 more sessions in the books, and what we did is 2 15-minute sessions, only separated by sort of 10-15 minutes in there. The reason for doing that is because John is around the track, and I thought, you know, send him out to a certain location and give him the chance to film some stuff, because earlier on in the day we were having like 30-40 minutes between sessions, and of course he's just sort of standing out there with not much to film because, let's be honest, there's other track day stuff here, but he's here to help myself, CMMCS, and, you know, just film me and whatever other cars are racing or doing, as I should say, track days today. So yeah, all went well. The tyres, nice Toyo tyres. I think it's the R888s, so it's what they use in the enduro cars, the spec tyre. That's what we had left over, but as I said, we're going to go on to the Nankangs next, so that's going to be, we're going to have like an hour and a half off, and then we're going to fit those tyres, obviously check all the fluids and stuff like that, and then get the car ready for the afternoon. But it's just so much fun. I mean, I think it's partly the track for sure. I don't know whether it will be as fun at, you know, a flat track, for example, but it's just so fun. I mean, just being closer to the limit than I thought I would be is awesome. And I know the lap time is, I know it's kind of meaningless in a lot of ways because we're here just to have fun, but it was coming down, which is nice. Not quite what I set my aim for. I don't know whether we're going to get down to that low in terms of lap time, but I'll see whether we do over the weekend, then I'll tell you what it was. But we'll go on the next session, new set of tyres, and then just sort of understand them as the rest of the day goes on. So we're only going to probably do 2 more sets going forward of sessions, so probably 2 more 15-minute sessions to end off the day, and yeah, should be all good. So what we'll do, put those tyres on and then get some fuel in it, and then go out on track. So time for our final few runs of the day. At this point we'd switched over to the Nankang tyres, so these were my first laps around the circuit on these tyres. So of course, take it a little bit easier in those opening laps, because of course you don't want to go too crazy straight away, because of course they're brand new, so you want to scrub them in a little bit. So I do have the helmet camera, which I've been speaking about throughout this series, and of course, so unfortunately we can't really use it on race day, but I'm going to show you a bit of footage we got now. I think this was one of my last laps of the day. I don't think it was my quickest or anything, but I think it's just one of the best ones it recorded. So unfortunately I was playing around with some settings myself, and yeah, I messed up the stabilisation a bit, as you can see here. I think some of the other features of the footage look a bit nicer, but unfortunately it doesn't look especially stabilised. I'm not sure this is really how much your head is moving inside a race car. It's kind of crazy if that's the case, but I thought it was interesting to show you regardless. So through turn 1, once again, wasn't quite getting it flat out. I was starting to get there though. I was starting to feel a bit more at home in this car, but then the switch over to the Nankang tyres definitely sort of shook me up a little bit, I guess you could say, because they did feel completely different. Maybe that's just a mental thing, maybe they're not really, but in my head at least it felt quite a bit different. It just felt like I was understeering a lot more through the corners and just didn't have as much grip, full stop. But anyway, coming down to the end of the straight, I kind of enjoyed this braking zone here. Really late, it's a straight line, throw it into the corner. And unfortunate thing about this helmet camera is there, you can see it jumps a little bit between recording sections, which is a bit of a shame, but we only missed out on a little bit of straight line. Now through here, down to the gooseneck. As I've been saying, this is one of the trickiest corners for me. I just didn't feel at home through there at all. I mean, I started to understand it as the weekend went on, through qualifying and the races, but still I was struggling, I'd say, to feel 100% confident through there. Just it's a tough corner in a car like this where you're obviously needing to take momentum. I wasn't doing the best job through there. But regardless, coming into the last part of this lap, which I really enjoy, throwing into the left, then into the right, which takes you up and over the mountain. I'm sure I was going 4 wheels in the air, going so quickly in this car, and through the S's towards the end of the lap here. As I said, one of my favourite sections of any track I've driven on so far. Of course, the final 2 corners, especially this penultimate one here, is such a tight corner, which is, I'm sure, a bit of a pain in a quicker, heavier, longer car. In this one it wasn't so bad. And up to the final corner, which for whatever reason in this car I just didn't really feel especially at home with. So up to the start finish line, it's not a great lap, don't get me wrong, but it's a full lap from the visor cam, and hopefully you enjoyed that. But there we are. I think we did a couple of laps after the visor cam lap, and then that was our day done. Some really good running in there. Most of it wasn't really close to what I'd say the limit was, but overall it was a really productive day. Allowed me to get to know the car and the track, and that was the 2 things that I really needed going into this weekend, because as I've said already, it's a new track and a new car, so all of this was very important for me. And there we are, that was our day done, and afterwards I gave my thoughts on what I thought was a really important day for me in this season. So there we are, we've done our last 2 sessions of this track day. A lot of fun here at Cadwell. We made the most of the track day, unlike what happened at Castle Combe last time when I misjudged, I guess, the sessions and the lengths of the time we were out on track, and we really didn't make the most of it. We were only out on track for like an hour then. Today we've got at least 2 hours in the books. Nice solid running. It's a lot of fun, this thing. I'm looking forward to getting out on track and racing it, qualifying it tomorrow. The weather is a bit iffy, so we'll see what happens tomorrow, and obviously overnight with the camping and stuff. But yeah, I just think in general it's just going to be enjoyable. I think that's the sort of beauty of this thing, is that you can sort of push it more than you feel like you can with other cars. At least I can. I sort of have that issue with the Honda of just struggling to get closer and closer to the limits, a bit more of a build up. But yeah, with this I'm starting to hear the tyres squeal more than I would have in the Honda, and start to feel the, I guess, stopping of the adhesion, like you sort of feeling where over the limit is, if that makes any sense. That wasn't very good English. Anyway, yeah, really fun car, awesome track. I think I've said this already, but didn't expect really to race here at the start of the year in anything, let alone this. I didn't even know this thing existed until the start of this year. But it's all happened. We're here. Test track days, been a lot of fun. Been nice to not battle with other cars out on track, but follow them, learn their lines and that sort of stuff, and just learn a lot from, I guess, the regulars here at Cadwell. But nonetheless, we're gonna have a good evening, I guess, and go out and have some fun tomorrow. So here we are, back for day 2 here at Cadwell Park, and we're looking forward to qualifying now. So we've just bolted the transponder in, because that was one thing we didn't get around to doing yesterday. And in a second, just before we go out, I'm going to give it a wash, because I'm well aware that it's a little bit dirty after yesterday and probably not been washed in a while. So that's what I'm going to do next, and then we'll head out for quali. I think we're about 30 or 40 minutes away from being called. Thankfully I had a decent night's sleep. I don't know whether I mentioned it yesterday at all, but we all had a pretty rough night on Friday night, and not many of us had any sleep at all. So that was a bit of a tough one getting through yesterday, but I think enough caffeine got us through it. And but yeah, looking forward to getting out there today in quali. Very happy that I made the decision to do the sort of, I guess, track day yesterday, because I think it's really helped me in terms of confidence. Of course, I know I'm probably going to be a bit cautious in quali, get through it. I want to obviously set some good lap times, but at the end of the day, just get out there and have some fun. This is a mega track that I think, whether you're racing with anyone or not, you're going to have a lot of fun, and that's why the track days are always fully booked here, and that's why everyone just loves coming here. So yeah, looking forward to it. Tin top and super saloons are combined. I think it's a rolling start later on, but I need to check. I think I'm a little bit confused by the final instructions, so I'll ask about and see what's what. But nonetheless, looking forward to day 2 here at Cadwell. lovely track, and can't wait to get out there and start the qualifying. So it was time for qualifying. 15 minutes and we were mixed in with a bunch of classic cars. So there's also a series called the, I think, CMMC Classic Challenge, which has been on the same race weekend as the Southern Series a number of times this year, but this time I assume to help with the costs of the overall weekend for the club, they mixed us together for the qualifying session, which wasn't actually really a bad thing whatsoever. I'm sure it meant some traffic for some of the faster cars, but for me personally it helped a lot because there are actually some cars that I was about the same speed as. So here we are, rolling in to the assembly area. We've got Richard in front, Sparrowhawk Racing, a really great Instagram page if you want to go and check him out. A road focused Ford Fiesta that also takes to the track for these events. I think he also races with the modified Fords as well. So definitely check out his Instagram page if you are interested in Fords especially. And we were chatting in the assembly area for a while because I think there might have been an incident in the previous session which meant that we were delayed, and of course in the assembly area for longer than expected, but the main thing, of course, everyone out on track is fine, so it doesn't matter for us to be waiting in the assembly area for any extra amount of time. And as we exit here, I was one of the final people, if not maybe the last, or maybe there is a couple of people in my mirror you can see, to exit the pits and get onto the track. So really the main thing for me here was build up that confidence that we'd sort of gained from yesterday. Of course I knew it was going to take a few laps to get back into the rhythm, but I'd had the evening to think about the main thing for me, which was the tyres, the difference between these and the Toyo tyres. So that was, I guess, the big thing in my mind, get some heat into them. The main thing a lot of people were telling me about these tyres were that they take a few more laps to get the heat into them, which I know isn't really ideal in a sprint race, but it's just the trade-off for having, I guess, a cheaper tyre really at the end of the day. It's more focused on a track day scenario. But nonetheless, a few laps in, or actually I think this might have been the first lap out of the pitch. You can see I've let past Gideon in his Honda Civic EP3, similar to mine, and you can see up the road actually there is quite a lot of traffic. So a problem that the faster guys were having, that I spoke to afterwards, were saying that there are a lot of the classic cars that were at the front of the queue, but they were unfortunately quite a lot slower, so it meant that there was a big old traffic jam here, because of course no one wants to take big risks in the early part of the session, so there's only a limited amount of places around this track that you can get past people, even of course if you're like 20 or 30 seconds a lap faster. And on the first couple of laps out of the pit lane out of the assembly area, you don't want to be going crazy because you're still on cold tyres. Regardless, I was having fun out there. I knew I was going to be one of the slowest cars, but to my amazement actually I was keeping up with some people and even managed to have a couple of overtakes, which is really surprising. Definitely not what I expected going into the session. I thought I was going to be quite a lot slower than everything else, but you can see here I gave myself a little bit of a gap to, I think this is a Marcos in front here, but understandably he was, I don't think he had tested the day before, so I just had to get past him here because he was really quite slow on these opening couple of laps, which is completely fine. But I was trying to get into my rhythm, and I realised this is a long track and you really need to get in a few laps to get some confidence. So I was like, I need to get past here. He eventually, gave me the space, and I was free, if you will. But then saying that, I think within a lap and a half we were caught up to the back of this gaggle of cars, which was quite interesting. So we've got a couple of classics in here. There's a Super Saloon, Jack in his BMW, and I think maybe another car at the front of the queue. I can't quite make out what it is right now, but yeah, an interesting mix of cars with my Ford Ka right at the back here. So I was doing my best here to keep with them, and I was a bit confused here. I put my hand up in confusion. I was like, what's going on here? I was wondering why people were going so slowly. I guess that's what you think in the moment. I guess in reality they're just taking to the track and trying to learn it. But the problem was, of course, that I was so slow in a straight line. I could carry better speed than a lot of people through the corners, but it's of course in a straight line where people can just blast straight back past you. So okay, there's a bit of an advantage of the cars in front here, and you can see some of the other classics now are making some moves to get past, but I can't make the moves because I'm not quick enough down the straight, and I'm also obviously not to do anything too silly through the corners, because I understand obviously not everyone's going to be looking in their mirrors through the corners. Regardless, I thought, okay, I've got a nice run here, I'm going to try and get past, but no, as soon as the guys can put their foot down, of course they're going to be quicker, so I thought, okay, tuck into the slipstream here and do my best. So I thought, if I stay close enough here, I might be able to go down in the inside on the brakes here, saying that it's probably a bit too far back. I was a bit later on the brakes here. I was actually a lot earlier on the brakes than I had been throughout the track day the day before, but I'm getting a little bit frustrated at this point. I was a bit like, come on, just hopefully you can see me in my mirror, just please let me through, because obviously at this point it's not an ideal situation for either of us. So I was going to like turn on the inside. No, okay, he's probably not seen me there, so I'm just going to have to be a bit bold here, try and go around the outside here, going to the gooseneck, which thankfully was all right. And you know, in that split second, it's hard to judge whether you've got the overtake done, but all was good. Then I knew we went into a section where I should have a bit of an advantage over them, because I'd done the track day the day before, I had a bit of confidence, and also just through this section naturally I wasn't as slow in comparison to the others. So qualifying in general went quite well. I was really happy with the general pace in comparison to the cars around me. I think I did have the lap timer on the car, but it wasn't really much help because I wasn't getting a clear lap in at all at any point. I know that's the classic excuse, but in a Ford Ka, I definitely didn't expect that to be the case. I thought I was going to be generally alright. I thought I wasn't going to really be encountering traffic, but strangely we did encounter traffic, not once, not twice, on multiple occasions, which was a little bit funny, but also a little bit frustrating in the moment as well, because I wanted to get a clean lap in to see what I could do. I definitely felt better after having the evening to think about driving the circuit, driving the car for the first time, just knowing what I could possibly improve going into this. But once again, I'm getting stuck up behind one of the classics. I think I said this multiple times, it's unbelievable that I was in, of course, such a slow car. I thought there was no way I was going to be stuck up behind someone, but when you put it into perspective, some of these guys are just doing their first laps around the circuit, possibly ever, in classic cars. They, of course, don't want to push it as much as a modern car in a qualifying session, because, you know, they're there to race it at the end of the day, and possibly this was their first few laps on the circuit. So I can understand why people, obviously, especially the classics, taking it easy, but I couldn't really believe it. A little bit funny, but anyway. So this was the first lap. I was trying to get past this MG here, caught him at the wrong moment, so I thought at this point have a quick look in your mirrors, Alex, and just back off, give yourself a few seconds, and hopefully in doing so the next lap you'll be alright to have a clean one and hopefully have your best lap of the session, and hopefully it's clean. So here we are, starting the lap, heading down to the first turn. You can see the gap there to the MG. I mean, let's count it, 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds possibly to him at this point of the track, turn 1. So I was quite happy with that. I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to catch him at this rate. He's got a much quicker car here. So just drive your lap, Alex. I think some of the lines I was taking are starting to improve, running out a bit wider there on the entrance to this straight here, because I was taking a tight line for the majority of the track day sessions the day before, which it was okay, but it wasn't especially quick, because obviously you're hindering your exit speed by taking the tight line, even though maybe you're saving a little bit of time by running tighter and saving those extra meters. I think the run you get down the straight is even more important. It's even going to be more important if you had a tow, but of course I didn't, because there was no other Ford Kas or no one really similar speed in the straight, so I was most certainly the slowest car in the straight lines. Now, a little bit of a moment through there, collected it up alright. Definitely got me a little bit on the edge of my seat, but I do realise that you can still be taking a lot more commitment through those corners, and just generally not quite doing enough here. Now, I saw a few cars up in my mirrors. I think that was one of the faster classics that I let by there, but actually in doing so this is going to create a little bit of traffic here, because he's going to encounter this MG and I can't see what's in front of it, but it's I think another blue classic. So he's going to go from here. I think that puts the MG a little bit offline and compromises his speed through the corner, and then I'm catching him up right here. So you can see I'm hampering myself a lot through here. I won't say a lot of time, but some time is being lost here, but I generally just have to go for the move down the inside there. It's not ideal for a qualifying session to be having to make a more of an aggressive overtake down the inside there. I obviously just praying that he saw me when I went past, but it was important for me because I needed to feel comfortable in the car, and apart from that last section there, I was really happy with the lap. It felt like a nice solid lap. I mean, it wasn't entirely quick, but I think in general it was what I wanted from that lap. So quite happy with how the qualifying session went. Actually quite fun to be battling with people. I know you're not really going for overtakes and stuff like that in qualifying, but it's actually fun to be battling with people around the same sort of speed on a race weekend where you fully didn't expect that to be the case. So there we are, that's our qualifying session done, and we're going to pull into the pit lane now. Busy and quite frantic 15 minutes out on track there. Nice to be out on track with a number of really lovely cars, but of course I possibly would have actually got a better lap with there not being so many cars out on track, because I would assume I wouldn't have encountered the traffic, or at least not so much. Well, I wouldn't have been catching up to anyone, I don't think, in the modern field, but regardless, it was a really good session for me. I think just in general, important to get all of that knowledge locked in before the race, which was going to be, well, the first race that was going to be coming up. I think it was the first thing after lunch. We had a bit of a break, which was quite nice, but overall quite happy with that. And after the session, just got out of the car, checked around it, everything all looked good, and I was ready to give you a nice debrief after our first session on this Sunday. So there we go, qualifying done here at Cadwell Park, and can't lie, that was a lot of fun. We were mixed in with a group of classic CMMCE cars which have their own separate race, but for the purposes of quali and making sure that the timetable is, I guess, a little bit shorter for everyone, we're mixed in with them. Actually created some nice little battles. In a way, I wish we were racing with them, because that means that I could have battled with a few people, because there are a few of the classics have smaller engines, and maybe we could have kept out with them. Actually I qualified ahead, I think, 3 of them, which is quite nice, about half of their field. But regardless, qualifying for me was quite good. I really enjoyed it. Getting used to the tyres a little bit, because I was struggling with that last night. I think I might have said that the compound just felt a bit harder and not as grippy, so struggled with that early on, getting some temperature into the tyres. But you saw at the start that I think a couple of the slower cars in the classics were sort of at the front of the queue, so it took like 3 laps for everyone to get into a sort of right order, so we could all sort of actually get a decent lap time in. But anyway, once that was all done, I got like, I think 5 or 6 laps in. I think my last lap was my quickest, and I was shown in the video, I think I got stuck up behind someone, which is remarkable. I didn't think that was going to be the case, but yeah, I got stuck up behind someone, and that meant that I probably squandered possibly my best lap round Cadwell yet in that moment. But anyway, it was a really good session, really enjoyed it, and now we've got a few hours until the first race, which will happen after lunch, first thing after lunch, and yeah, looking forward to it. Really great track. Not really going to be racing with anyone now that we're not in a race with the classics, but still, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a good track to drive just by itself in whatever car, so let's go. So, time for race number 1 here at Cadwell. So, this was the first race, I think, after the lunch break, so we had a little bit of time, actually quite a lot of time between our qualifying session and race 1, so there was a little bit in the back of my mind about just making sure that I take the first few laps a little bit easier, acclimatise to the circuit once again. I mean, I know you're supposed to acclimatise to it straight away, but in a class of my own, I think that there was much point in going too crazy, actually, because of the distance. There was only one person in each class, and it was actually funny that I think 8 or 9 competitors we had were all spread out, 1 per class. I mean, obviously that's not the way that it happens on purpose, but it was just quite funny that's the way it played out. So it wasn't really anyone that close to each other in terms of performance on paper, but actually, because of the way the circuit was, it provided some great racing for some of the other drivers. So of course we're starting at the back, but that's to be fully expected, and at this point it kind of feels like we've done so much track action by this point that obviously it sort of feels like there's not much to go, so just bring it home sort of thing. But I know that's not what you're supposed to do when you're racing, especially you trying to go quicker every lap. whether there's someone racing around you or not. But I think even more so in this scenario, it was like, okay, I've got no one really to race against here. Just keep it consistent and then try and improve those lap times, because I realised that there was quite a lot of time to gain to what I wanted to be doing by the end of this weekend. So I think up until this point my best lap was only in the 204s, which I know is not good at all. I mean, I'm going to put some of it down to not having a toe and obviously being on these tyres. You know, I've got a long list of excuses, but really at the end of the day I know there's time to be found in a lot of areas. But my best time, I think until this point, was like a mid 204, I'd like to say. But my aim was to get into the 202s, and I still know that's not a big target, but that's where I wanted to be by the end of this weekend. So the outlet, once again, actually quite an interesting story is that, of course, we all let out the assembly area and the safety car was going really quite quickly, so I had to go nearly flat out for 3/4 of the lap to catch up to everyone, which was kind of funny in hindsight. But at the time it was a little bit worrying, because I was like, am I going to lose these guys on the formation lap? Obviously the pace car, safety car is quicker than me in this Ford KA, so yeah, I didn't expect that to be quite the case, but you know, we learn from it, or hopefully we do at least. So by the end of the lap we are on the back of Jack's in front in his BMW, and then we've got just in front of him, we've got Mr. Sparrowhawk Racing in his Ford Fiesta. So nice to see Rich doing a really good lap time there. I think it was actually too far off Martin Scott's BMW. I think quite a lot of people taking to the track and qualifying for their first ever laps of Cadwell. So understandable why they're being a bit more tentative, and the races are of course where you want to get the result. Even though we were all going to technically win our class, of course there's chances to beat each other and, you know, go onto the overall podium, where most cars could actually battle for the overall podium. And you can see by the time we get into turn 1, we've obviously lost quite a lot of time, but the two cars in front going side by side, two very different cars, the BMW and the Ford Fiesta ST, and this time it's the BMW that comes out on top through the opening corners. But as we go down here, interestingly to see, we'll have to follow Rich's progress here down this straight. So gets the slipstream out of this corner here and places his car in a really good position. He's not really losing much time to Jack in the BMW, and he actually does a really nice move down the inside here. And we're going to stick with this move, or stick with this camera angle I should say, until the end of the straight. You can see down the inside there Rich goes for a nice overtake, and nice to see him really putting on a show for those marshals there. And I think there were a couple of spectators as well, but I think Rich was saying he was a little bit worried about not racing with anyone because his usual sparring partners didn't come up to Cadwell. And interestingly enough, he got another competitor, another person to battle against, but probably not where he expected it. So really good to see those two battling it out. Of course, very different cars and having their speed in different areas of the track, but nice to see Rich putting a move there early on in this race. And I realised that my progress was going to be really limited to just going faster, so kept an eye on my track timer. I can't remember what it's called now. I think it's an AIM Solo, so I kept an eye on that and just tried to put in consistent laps, and actually I think they were pretty good in terms of consistency and also in terms of getting better each lap. And then I just looked to my rear view mirror and was a bit confused. We're only like 2 or 3 laps in at this point, so surely I'm not being lapped already. But no, actually Paul in his BMW had a problem. He'd had to come into the pit lane, so there he is going back past me there a few laps into this race. So that's actually for position technically. I mean, I wasn't really going to be able to defend from him, I know, but that was a move for position, so I wasn't in last place for the whole of this race. Paul had to come in, fix the ignition problem he had, and went back out, and his charge which saw him actually all the way from last to P2, which is quite impressive. I don't know whether he will ever release the onboard footage from this comeback drive, but it will definitely be worth watching if he ever does. It was really, really fascinating. And after that, I had a few laps of relaxation. I just didn't have much to look at in front of me or behind me for the preceding laps, which wasn't a bad thing. It allowed me to concentrate on the driving and just generally try and understand a little bit better where the limits are. So I realised a lot of people probably could have found those on the track day, on the day before. A general thing that I've just noticed in my motorsport journey, if you want to put it like that, is I just struggle to learn things really, really quickly. So I need a little bit more time to adapt and understand situations in motorsport, which, you know, it's not always ideal. Hopefully I'm a faster learner in other parts of life, but yeah, in terms of racing and getting used to a car or a track, it takes me a bit of time. So there we are. There's a half a lap of me just driving around, but by lap number, I think 5 or 6, I had to look in my mirrors once again, and whilst it was cool to see some people early on, my attention did start to focus on my rear view mirror after about lap 5. I think it was 5 or 6 when Rod started charging through. There we are. He just put a lap on me there. Actually quite happy with myself really that I only got lapped once. I know that sounds stupid, but that is a beast of a car that's just overtaken me there. And I'm in the Ford K, probably one of the slowest racing cars in the world. So around the circuit, I know it's quite a long circuit, I'm pretty happy with that. Just on paper, I know it's nothing special at all, but just something that made me feel a little bit happier about myself and any sort of performance we put on this. So that was cool as always to see Rod out on track. That's one of the most interesting club racing cars I think you'll see in the country. I mean, I know it's not technically a club level car, it was a world rally car at one point, but to see that racing around in the same race as me is always cool. I mean, obviously you have some amazing stuff like TCR cars and even GT4 cars, and sometimes in the same races you on race days, but to be perfectly honest, I found like something like that or Paul's BMW there is also equally special in a lot of ways. So there we are. He's already got past me once after pitting in early, and then has put a lap on me here. And also I saw my mirrors battling BMW duo Martin Scott versus Ken Angel. They were having a great battle actually in both races, and there I've just made sure that I got out of the way of them. I knew that there was a tricky sequence of corners coming up here, so I didn't want to interfere with their battle too much. So Martin looking for a move down the inside there, maybe catching Ken out a little bit, I'm not too sure. Those two were so evenly matched actually, it was really great to see. And I'm just putting on the indicators here as well, just to indicate to I think it was Gideon coming up, and then I think it was also Paul Hadfield. I'm hoping I'm getting that name correctly, but yeah, Hadfield coming past in his Puma as well. Those two are having a great battle. Nice to see Gideon also putting in some really good lap times as well. I was happy with just generally my performance over the race. It was, the lap times were consistent. I know it's a bit easier to be consistent when you're racing around by yourself technically. But anyway, coming through the last part of the race now. This is the last lap of my race at least. I think I did 8 or 9 laps, which I know is not a lot, but it was only a 15-minute race. So nice to get that amount of laps in and only get lapped once, because I know getting lapped by Rod has been, well, possibly took away a class win. I mean, it's a bit pretentious, but from Linden Hill, I mean, I've moved on, but around the final corner to complete our first race here at Cadwell. A lonely one, I'll tell you that, but it is what it is. You can only take on what's in front of you there. So there we are, pulling in to this is Parc Ferme at the end of the race here. Thanking the marshals on my cool-down lap, and then coming into Parc Ferme, parking up behind Gideon. There's only a few of us in Parc Ferme, but I got out, had a chat with a few of the guys. Everyone seemed to enjoy themselves. I mean, it's a big journey for a lot of us, so that's the main thing, I think. So there we are. That is race 1 done here at Cadwell Park. A bit of an interesting one actually for me. I mean, of course it was a little bit lonely. I mean, on the formation lap I had to go flat out pretty much to keep up with everyone, and I still wasn't keeping up with everyone. So lesson learned, try and be a bit closer when you're leaving the assembly area. But even still, I think it's obviously just my car's probably not as quick as the safety car. Well, it definitely isn't as quick as the safety car. So yeah, that's what it is. So yeah, looking forward to race 2 a little bit later on, and I've got to say I'm really happy with myself because I improved my qualifying time by 3 seconds, which was actually more than I expected. It's quicker than I went yesterday as well, so really happy with that as a performance, if you will. And I definitely felt like there was more time to be gained around there. I mean, obviously every racing driver says that, but I found it quite likely that there's a few areas around the track where I can just nip a bit of time out there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back out there for race 2. I realised that I had over half a tank full of fuel in there for that first race, and definitely didn't need that much fuel. So for the second one, we're going to be going out with less, of course. It's about a third of a tank right now, which probably even then is still too much, but just to be on the safe side, that's what we're going to do. But no, I'm sort of rambling on here a little bit. Apologies for that. Just been an exciting race for me there, even though of course I wasn't really battling with anyone. Only got lapped once, so that's fantastic news. But yeah, okay, looking forward to the next one coming up in about 2 hours time, and then we'll load up and have 5 or 6 hours at best of a journey home. Cadwell Park is great, but quite far for a one-day event. And because of the layout, we were back into race 2 quite quickly. We didn't have much time to relax. So there we are, just getting the rear camera sorted and rolling onto the track after waiting in assembly. Now, there's only a certain amount of assembly area footage I think is interesting, so let's just cut to the racing. This one, I mean, I say racing, you know what I mean. Let's cut to the track time. So here we are, this is the formation lap once again. So we've kept with the guys a little bit better in the second one. I can't lie, I still did lose them a little bit in the first half of the lap, but it's a bit easier to catch up to them this time. I think the safety car driver did drive a little bit slower. Maybe for my sake, I don't know, but at least I sort of started in a pack here. Now, actually catching up to them possibly ruined my great run into turn 1, because I was in, I think, possibly 3rd gear there, and it didn't obviously take off quite like it would have done if I'd had more of a run up. But you know, let's be perfectly honest, I'm not really going to be racing with anyone here or battling with anyone, so it's all academic really. And yeah, at this point I just know from the first race that okay, I want to still find some time. I think I got into the 203s in the first race, maybe it was to the low 204, but as I've been saying, my aim was really to get into the 2 minute and 1 lap times. Oh, sorry, 2 minute and 2 lap times. 2 minute 1 would have been great, but 2 minute 2 was sort of what I was going for the weekend. So that was my only main aim really here, of course, except from finishing, because that would be great. It's been a long journey, so it'd be nice to have finished both races. So I can't lie, I just love showing you the footage here because it's just such a fun track to watch from. I know we're sort of playing at half speed in the KA here, but I still find it enjoyable footage to look at just because the track is so interesting. And obviously we've got the nice shots from around the circuit, thanks to John. He's obviously put in a bit of a shift to get around this circuit, I think actually a couple of times. So he was well and truly exhausted after this one, I can tell you that. But yeah, fantastic track to drive, and I would recommend to anyone that is even, you know, that sees it on their calendar and that might be a bit sceptical, because it is a long way, you know, if you're London based or even below that in the southeast, it's a long way, but I'll tell you what, it's really worth it. It really is worth it. We'll see what happens for 2022. I don't know whether it's going to be on the CMMCS calendar, but if it is, I'll most likely take up that option once again. It'll be a lot of fun. So we've skipped ahead quite quickly into this race because, as I said, we're sort of driving by ourselves, and we got overtaken here by Rod. He put a lap on us, I think lap 5 or 6 once again, and then we got Paul coming up as well. So he actually lapped 2 seconds quicker than Rod in that first race. I think that was a bit of an idea that he might have challenged Rod for the overall victory in this second one, but I think Rod, he said himself he hasn't driven at Cadwell for a long time, so he was obviously learning as he went along, even after however many race wins. He was still getting to know the track maybe a little bit again, but obviously with a bit more competition in the second race, the BMW being a bit closer, I guess Rod was able to put in the lap times he probably could have done in the first race, but didn't have so much incentive because, you know, driving around by himself with a bit of a lead. No need to push the extra 5%, if that makes any sense. Now once again I saw in my ears a great battle between Ken Angel and Martin Scott, so I'm like, okay, just pull over here, Alex, this is a few corners before the gooseneck. So get to the inside here. I mean, possibly I could have done a better job here, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I guess the one thing you want to do as a slow car, especially one as slow as this, is just be predictable, and I think I was quite predictable there. I indicated my intention, even I think actually with the indicators themselves actually, and then I also just pulled to the inside there, and they're both quick cars with grippy tyres, they can go around the outside there with not too much issue. So once again I see in my mirrors Hadfield in his Puma, I thought he's really going some here, so I just got out of the way here. And he actually, you know, he didn't need to, fair enough. At the end of the race he said thank you for letting me through there, because he was on a rapid lap, I think were his words, or a mega lap, I can't remember which ones. But I think this might have been his quickest lap of the race, so it's nice to see that I didn't get in the way of that. He was definitely on one. He wasn't that far off the back of those two BMWs as well, and obviously he's driving around with a lot less power than those guys. So, good stuff. Right, I think I'm going to show you this, my final lap of the day, my final lap of Cadwell Park in this race. So of course we've been up here for 2 days now. I've not really got that close to my goal of a 2:02, but this was it. I was trying to go flat through turn 1 like we mentioned earlier. Can't lie, I didn't quite do it. I had the very briefest of lifts, but yeah, I can't say I did it flat, unfortunately. But I think I do know, going back here now, I think it was a little bit more on the limit with these tyres. Well, at least I thought it was, but I think realistically I was nowhere near the outside of the track on the exit of that corner, so I think flat out wouldn't have really been much of a problem. It's just building your brain up to it. I just wish I could have put my brain up enough to do it the last lap of the day, but it is what it is. It is what it is. I can't change it now. But this lap, definitely a lot cleaner up until this point. This is by far my best lap. Much more committed through here. Feeling good. I feel like I've done probably the best lines I've done all day at this lap. I guess I was kind of building myself up to going for it on the last lap of the day. I mean, in the day, I'm not really racing anyone, but this was a big goal that I wanted to try and get to. But regardless, a little bit, still looking back at this, I was more committed than I'd been for the majority of the day, but still, there's a bit more margin on the outside there. I think braking into here wasn't too bad, but from what I remember correctly, this was the section I felt I messed up here. So let's have a look at it. So I don't know, I'm not really cutting to the inside as much as I could here. I mean, it's probably like only travelling a couple of extra meters, but still, I think I possibly mistimed the shift through there. Up through here is not too bad, but I think it was that the left into the right before the mountain, that's where I felt I lost a bit of time. And also through here, I mean, I feel like I'm quite committed through here, so not too bad at all. But those corners preceding the mountain, and then these final, actually maybe not so much that corner, but this final corner, I think I shifted up through here, and there's just so much more margin on the outside there. Yeah, I definitely feel like I could have committed a little bit more to the final corner especially. But there we are, a really enjoyable weekend of racing here at Cadwell Park. I mean, I know I say racing, it's kind of in quotations there, but what a day, what a day. It was so much fun. Really enjoyed the whole experience going up to Cadwell, doing the track day, meeting a lot of great people, watching a bit of the other racing myself. Didn't get to watch as much as I'd like, because of course I was sort of staying around with the car and trying not completely overdo myself. But regardless, thanks to everyone that made it a really enjoyable weekend up at Cadwell. I can't thank everyone enough. Obviously my dad, John, my whole family, just everyone else. It was a great one. Really looking forward. Hopefully we can go back at some point, and I guess I'll leave you to my final thoughts. So it's a few days after our event at Cadwell Park with the CMMCS. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't get around to recording this at the end of the day because after that second race, everyone was, flat out. We had to get the car on the trailer. We had to pack up all of our camping equipment and so on, and we had to do some filming, some interview stuff. So we didn't leave Cadwell until quite late, until I think it was like 7:30. Yeah, it was quite late. So it was we spent quite a while at the track even after the racing was all done, just getting everything sorted, because obviously we're doing stuff for the club, so I want to make sure that was done properly and as best as possible. So I didn't get around to recording this outro, but maybe a couple of days has done me good to sort of come to terms with the weekend, because once I realised the entry list, I realised there was only 9 or 10 of us. And I think, unfortunately, Steve in his Volkswagen pulled out quite late. It meant there was only going to be a small grid of us, so I think it was quite unlikely there was going to be a car for me to battle with. Saying that, qualifying was really enjoyable because I got the chance to battle with a couple of the classics. And interestingly, if they were in the same race for us, I mean, it's separated obviously to keep the classic cars racing against the other classic cars and modern against modern, but it was actually quite nice to be able to battle with a few people within the qualifying session. I wouldn't say like battle, I wasn't like actually going really for overtakes, apart from my last lap where I went for my fastest time in quali, where I really wanted to get past the MGB, so I had to go past it in the penultimate turn. It's not something I'd ever really normally do in a qualifying session, but because that was sort of my best lap, I mean, it wasn't great still, but it was, you know, definitely my best lap in quali. I was like, I'm going to have to go for this, so I went past him. Of course, that compromised us both, but I still managed to get my best lap of the session right there at the end. And then the first race and the second race, it was always to be expected. I was going to be battling with no one. The funny thing is, though, it's funny looking back at it now, but it was a bit frustrating at the time, was on the outlap. Obviously, I am going as quick as I can on the outlap to try and just keep up with them through that first 2/3 of the lap. The guys at the front, the safety car, is obviously quicker than me. So until he slowed down at the end of the lap towards the sort of, I guess, forest section, I couldn't really keep up, so it's a little bit embarrassing, but also a little bit funny as well now looking back at it. So thankfully Rod and everyone at the front slowed down enough for me to catch up, and obviously they're not doing it for me, but it all worked out just about to plan. So that was all good fun. I managed to actually get better as the weekend went on. My lap time's coming down, and I didn't manage to get the lap time I wanted this weekend. I was looking at like a 2:02, and I didn't quite do it. The last lap of the last race was my best lap, and I was on course for a 2:02, and then I messed up. I messed up a little bit on the last lap of the race. I'm pretty sure it was where was it? I think the last corner I lost a little bit, and then also I think it was coming down after the gooseneck, that left-hander, and then towards the mountain. It was that section there, so that's a little bit annoying. And I know 2:02 is not good at all. Look, don't get me wrong, I know they're going quicker than that in enduro car, that's for sure. But I definitely think these Nankang tyres are quite. Well, I don't want to say bad, but they're a lot slower than the Toyo or whatever tyres they use in the enduro car. So that's a little bit of a, I guess, a good thing to look back on, that maybe my lap times wouldn't have been so bad if I was on the other tyre, but maybe I'm just saying it as an excuse. I had a lot of fun, and that's the main thing. Like, I'm trying to be positive out of these things. It was a long journey up there to Cadwell. We didn't get back until 2 a.m, and then I had to work at the next day at 9 a.m. For everyone. So it was, yeah, a bit of a that day. Those days sort of all merged into one at this point, but looking back on it, it was a fantastic weekend. I absolutely loved it. I mean, it's quite unlikely that the CMMCS is going to go back there next year, I think, because unfortunately, understandably, you know, when you see 8 or 9 entrants, it's not particularly good for the club. And then obviously they need to at least break even out of an event, and I'm pretty sure they didn't. So that's really unfortunate. Hopefully next year we'll get to go to some other tracks. So, I mean, I don't even know what the next event is. I think it might be Brands Hatch and Silverstone. I'm not doing Brands Hatch, I don't think. Possibly we're doing Silverstone. We'll just see how it goes. But, you know, I want to get back in the Honda to do some races as well, because this is kind of like a one-off. We'll see how, we'll see what comes up. But I might be doing a few more events in the KA, but, you know, the focus is looking towards maybe doing an enduro car race at the end of the year, but also just trying to get a bit better in the Honda again. It's been what, like a month now since I last drove it, and we'll be doing that again in the next event, which is at Silverstone Type R Trophy. I will definitely be racing, well, assuming nothing happens in the meantime, racing the Road Sports race on the same day, and the day after I'm going to be racing at Brands Hatch in Track Attack, which is another club series, a little bit like the CMMCS. Unfortunately, the CMCS is on the same weekend, but I can't do the Saturday-Sunday event because obviously I'm at Silverstone. So it's unfortunate it's split across 2 days, otherwise I would have been able to do that one as well. That would have been a super busy weekend for me, but maybe it's best that I don't do that. We'll see what goes on, but I'm really very much looking forward to driving this a little bit more. I'm not expecting to do many races, if not any other races in it, but fantastic experience at Cadwell. I couldn't really have chosen a better car to have that experience in. First time out, I think having less power probably helped me. Maybe the Civic would have been a bit too tentative and I wouldn't have been able to fully enjoy the weekend, but this all worked fantastic. I really loved just sort of going for it, being late on the brakes, and yes, I realised the lap time wasn't great, but I enjoyed myself, and I felt at times like I was going quick. couldn't quite do turn 1 flat out. That was my aim as well. I had the 2:02 lap time and also going flat out through turn 1. And on my last lap, my fastest lap, which I said, nearly did it. It was like the briefest of lift-offs, but I can't say that I did it flat out. There was still a lift in there. Anyway, I want to say a massive thanks to my dad and John. Both of them made the trip up with me, and they made the weekend really enjoyable, because without them it would have probably not been such a fun weekend. I mean, I realise like camping and stuff isn't always like the most enjoyable thing in the world, but it certainly adds a little bit of a memory to the weekend, let's say, because it's there's always some dramas with camping. And obviously the long trip and all that, it would have been tough without them. So a massive thanks to them, and then also the likes of, well, everyone that I was racing with, really. You can look down the results list and see who was racing with me. I mean, in the Paddock area, I was with Gideon, September in his Honda, and also with Rich in his Ford Fiesta. So it was nice to be with them. We were chatting between all the races, and just, it's a really fantastic atmosphere. I can't say that enough. The CMMCS is just such a great community, and that's why I've loved racing with them. Loved filming and editing stuff for them this year. I realise obviously it's a smaller club and that wants to grow, but it's just been such a fantastic experience, and I can't say that enough. It's been a wonderful time. So I've spoken long enough. This was a lot longer than probably what I'd have done if I was in person on the day, but I hope that's cleared a few things up, and why I'm racing this and not the Honda, for example. That's still at Kettering, so that's still going to be, well, I don't know when I'm going to pick that up. I'm sure I'll get it all sorted before the next race. Well, I'll have to. So we'll be at Silverstone next. Hopefully I'll see some of you guys there. Silverstone is always going to be a big time for any club race. It's obviously, in a lot of ways, the home of racing in the UK, with the Grand Prix has only recently just been held. So it's, I'm sure there's going to be some special feeling when I go out of the pit lane at Silverstone for the first time. Never raced there before. And in real terms, I've only been there probably like 10 times as a spectator, so, you know, it's not like I'm a die-hard Silverstone fan. Like, I've not been there that much. So regardless, I'm looking forward to that a lot. It's going to be a busy weekend, so lots of videos going to be coming out, and actually the plan is to do a race weekend in August every single weekend, because I'm not at work with F1. Obviously they have their summer break, so it's going to be a busy time. And also John's birthday's in there as well, so I need to try and convince him to come and help film with me on his birthday. We'll see if that happens. Regardless, thanks to everyone that made this weekend super special. Really enjoyed it. And yeah, now we're caught up on sleep, I feel alright doing this outro, but I think at the time it wouldn't have been so good. But anyway, have a great one, guys, and I'll see you soon for another one of these. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.